Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most challenging things in life is letting go. When we find ourselves emotionally attached to someone, we often struggle to detach, even when we know it's the right thing to do. Today I want to share with you 5 essential rules on how to emotionally detach from someone in a way that aligns with wisdom, purpose, and self-worth. In life, understanding the purpose of relationships is crucial when navigating emotional attachments. Often we are taught to value relationships based on emotions, how much love or affection we feel for someone. While emotions are important, they are not the foundation of a relationship's purpose. Emotions are fluid, they can shift and change depending on circumstances. However, the purpose of a relationship is rooted in something far deeper and more stable. It is aligned with your destiny and life's mission. You see, every relationship you enter into serves a purpose. Some relationships are meant to teach you, others to support you, and some are there to guide you closer to your destiny. Emotional attachment becomes problematic when the purpose of the relationship has been fulfilled, yet we cling to the emotional ties because we are afraid to let go. This fear often stems from our inability to separate emotion from purpose. When the purpose of a relationship no longer aligns with your destiny, it is essential to emotionally detach, even if your heart tells you otherwise. This is not an act of cruelty, but an act of wisdom. The first step in emotionally detaching is acknowledging that the relationship in question has served its purpose. This requires self-reflection and honesty. Ask yourself, what has this relationship brought into my life? Has it helped me grow or has it held me back? When you start to view your relationships through the lens of purpose rather than emotion, the act of detaching becomes easier to understand. You begin to realize that holding on to something or someone who no longer serves your growth only delays your progress toward fulfilling your true purpose in life. When we attach to someone emotionally, we often believe that they are essential to our happiness or sense of identity. However, this belief is not always accurate. A relationship should not define who you are. Rather, it should complement and enhance the person you are becoming. If a relationship is no longer enhancing your growth or bringing you closer to your destiny, it may be time to let go. Detaching from someone emotionally does not mean that the relationship was worthless or insignificant. On the contrary, it simply means that its role in your life has come to an end. Think of relationships like seasons. Just as winter transitions to spring and spring to summer, relationships transition in and out of our lives. Each season has its own beauty, purpose, and lesson. When a relationship has reached its conclusion, we must recognize it and be willing to move forward. It is not about erasing the memories or the impact that person had on your life, but about understanding that their chapter in your story is now closed. Many people struggle with this concept because they place too much value on the emotional comfort that a relationship provides, even when the relationship has become detrimental to their growth. It is important to remember that comfort is not always beneficial. In fact, it can be the very thing that holds you back from realizing your potential. When you are too comfortable in a relationship that no longer serves you, you become stagnant. You stop pursuing new opportunities, you cease to grow, and you may even start to compromise your own values or dreams just to maintain the emotional attachment. Detaching emotionally is an act of courage. It is saying, I trust that my life has a purpose greater than my emotions. I trust that there is a plan for me, and I will not allow any relationship, no matter how comfortable, to deter me from that plan. This shift in perspective is powerful because it allows you to see relationships for what they truly are: vehicles that help move you toward your destiny. Some relationships will last a lifetime, while others are temporary, serving only a brief yet impactful role in your journey. Once you understand the purpose of relationships, you begin to detach from people who no longer fit into your journey with grace and wisdom. You are not filled with resentment or anger because you recognize that every person has played their part. Emotional detachment becomes less about cutting people off and more about freeing yourself to walk into the next phase of your life with clarity and focus. Detaching emotionally opens the door to new possibilities. When you hold on to relationships that no longer serve you, you block the opportunity for new purpose-filled relationships to enter your life. By letting go, you create space for growth, for new connections that align with your destiny. and for greater fulfillment in every area of your life. Understanding the purpose of relationships is the foundation of emotional detachment. It requires wisdom, self-reflection, and the courage to trust that every relationship, whether lasting or fleeting, has served its purpose. When you align your relationships with your purpose, detachment is no longer a painful process, but a natural step toward fulfilling your life's mission. Letting go becomes an act of faith and wisdom, trusting that your life is being guided toward its ultimate destiny. Rediscovering your own value is one of the most crucial steps when it comes to emotionally detaching from someone. Often when we are deeply attached to another person, especially in a relationship that has grown unhealthy or unproductive, we tend to lose sight of our worth. Emotional attachment has a way of distorting our self-perception, making us believe that the value we bring to the world is tied to that relationship or person. But in reality, your value is intrinsic. It exists independently of anyone else. When you become emotionally attached, you may unconsciously begin to place your worth in the hands of the other person. This can manifest in several ways. You may start seeking validation from them, depending on their opinions to define who you are or what you're capable of. Your confidence becomes tied to their acceptance or approval. This dependence is one of the key reasons why detaching emotionally can feel so difficult, because you've allowed someone else to become the source of your self-worth. But the truth is, your worth doesn't come from any external source. It doesn't come from a relationship, a friendship, or even the opinion of those closest to you. Your worth is inherent, built into the very fabric of who you are as a human being. And when you start to rediscover this, emotional detachment becomes not just a possibility, but a necessity. You begin to understand that staying attached to someone who no longer aligns with your purpose or growth is actually a form of self-neglect. Holding on prevents you from fully embracing the greatness you were meant to live. One of the first steps to rediscovering your value is to reconnect with yourself, your true self. Often, when we're overly attached to someone, we begin to compromise who we are in order to maintain the relationship. You might silence your own voice, suppress your own desires, or neglect your personal goals because you're so focused on the other person. In doing this, you gradually lose touch with your own identity. The process of detaching, therefore, requires you to come back to yourself. It involves asking deep and sometimes difficult questions. Who am I outside of this relationship? What are my passions, my values, my dreams? This reflection is not about isolating yourself or becoming emotionally distant from everyone around you. Rather, it's about understanding that you have an identity that is complete and whole, regardless of your connection to someone else. You are a person with unique gifts, talents, and contributions to make in this world, and none of that is diminished by a relationship ending or changing. Rediscovering your value also means recognizing the power of self-respect. When you respect yourself, you begin to set boundaries that protect your emotional and mental well-being. You no longer allow someone else's actions or opinions to dictate how you feel about yourself. This shift in perspective is incredibly empowering because it frees you from the need for external validation. You realize that no relationship is worth losing yourself over, and that anyone who diminishes your self-worth or makes you question your value is not someone you should remain attached to. Self-respect also plays a role in how you approach detachment. Detaching doesn't mean that you're rejecting or devaluing the other person. Rather, it's an acknowledgement that you respect yourself enough to prioritize your own well-being. You understand that emotional attachment to someone who no longer serves your growth is a disservice to the person you are becoming. In this way, detachment becomes an act of self-love. You are choosing to honor your own value, your own journey, and your own future over the comfort of remaining attached to something that is no longer beneficial. Another aspect of rediscovering your value is learning to cultivate self-compassion. Emotional attachment often comes with a lot of guilt or self-blame, especially when you recognize that a relationship is no longer working. You might start to wonder if you could have done something differently, or if letting go makes you a failure. But detaching doesn't mean you failed. It simply means that you've learned a valuable lesson, and that lesson is part of your growth. Be kind to yourself in this process. Recognize that your value is not diminished by the ending of a relationship. In fact, it's often through these experiences that we learn the most about ourselves and our worth. Rediscovering your value is also about shifting your focus. Instead of seeking fulfillment from the relationship or from the other person, you begin to look inward. What fulfills you? What brings you joy and peace? When was the last time you pursued something solely for your own happiness, without considering how it would affect someone else? Reconnecting with your passions, interests, and personal goals is a powerful way to rebuild your sense of self-worth. It reminds you that your happiness and success are not dependent on anyone else's presence in your life. In the process of rediscovering your value, you'll come to realize that you are enough just as you are. You don't need anyone to complete you or validate you, because you are already complete. This is the truth that makes emotional detachment not just possible, but freeing. It allows you to let go with peace and clarity, knowing that your value remains intact no matter what changes in your relationships. Learning to manage your emotions is a fundamental step when it comes to emotionally detaching from someone. Emotions are powerful, often driving our decisions and influencing how we see the world. They can be overwhelming, particularly in moments of emotional attachment, leading us to hold on even when it's clear that letting go is the healthier option. When we feel deeply connected to someone, it's easy to become consumed by the emotional bond, making it difficult to see the situation with clarity or rationality. To detach emotionally, you must first gain control over your emotions instead of allowing them to control you. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending they don't exist. Instead, it means recognizing your emotions, understanding them, and learning how to process them in a way that promotes your well-being. Emotional intelligence in this context becomes essential. It's about being aware of how you feel, why you feel that way, and how those feelings affect your decisions and actions. One of the key aspects of managing your emotions is learning to observe them without judgment. Often when we experience emotions like sadness, anger, or fear, we try to push them away or deny them. This is particularly true in situations where we're emotionally attached to someone and don't want to face the pain of detachment. But avoiding emotions doesn't make them disappear, it just delays the inevitable. Instead of running from your feelings, take a moment to sit with them. Acknowledge what you're feeling without labeling it as good or bad. By observing your emotions in this way, you begin to create a distance between your feelings and your identity. You are not your emotions, you are the observer of your emotions. This perspective shift is critical because it allows you to detach emotionally without being consumed by the intensity of your feelings. Another important element of emotional management is understanding that feelings are temporary. Emotions, by nature, are fleeting. They come and go like waves. In moments of emotional attachment, it can feel like the intensity of your feelings will last forever, especially when you're considering letting go of someone who means a lot to you. But the reality is, those emotions will fade with time if you allow them to. This doesn't mean you won't still care about the person, but the overwhelming grip of attachment will loosen as you begin to process your feelings and gain clarity. Reminding yourself that emotions are temporary can give you the strength to make decisions that are in your best interest, even when it feels emotionally difficult. Part of managing your emotions also involves setting boundaries with yourself. Emotional attachment often blurs the lines between your needs and the needs of the other person. You may find yourself sacrificing your own well-being to maintain the emotional bond or to avoid conflict. But managing your emotions means recognizing when it's time to put yourself first. This is where boundaries come in. Emotional boundaries are essential for maintaining a sense of self while still being connected to others. You need to know where you end and the other person begins. This means being clear about what you're willing to tolerate emotionally and what you're not. For instance, if you notice that interacting with this person consistently brings you emotional pain or confusion, it may be necessary to limit those interactions. This doesn't mean you have to cut them out of your life completely unless that's what's necessary for your growth, but it does mean protecting your emotional space. Boundaries allow you to manage the influx of emotions that often come with detachment by creating a buffer between you and the source of emotional turmoil. Self-soothing techniques are another vital tool for managing your emotions. When you're in the process of emotionally detaching, it's normal to experience a range of difficult emotions: sadness, loneliness, fear of the unknown. In these moments, knowing how to comfort yourself is key. You might find solace in journaling your thoughts and feelings, which can help you process the emotional waves as they come. Exercise, meditation, or spending time in nature can also be incredibly helpful for calming the mind and soothing emotional distress. Emotional management doesn't happen overnight. It's a skill that develops with time, practice, and patience. Often people who struggle with emotional attachment have never been taught how to manage their emotions effectively. They have grown accustomed to reacting impulsively to their feelings, letting those emotions dictate their actions. But through mindfulness and self-awareness, you can learn to respond to your emotions in a way that honors your well-being. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have about emotional detachment is that it means shutting off their feelings altogether. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Detachment isn't about becoming emotionally cold or indifferent. It's about finding balance. It's about allowing yourself to feel while not letting those feelings control your life. You can still care about the person you're detaching from, but you learn to do so in a way that doesn't compromise your mental and emotional health. Managing your emotions in the process of detachment involves acceptance. Accept that you are human and that emotions are a natural part of your experience. You will feel sadness, longing, or even grief when you let go of someone, and that's okay. What's important is that you don't allow these emotions to dictate your decisions or keep you stuck in a situation that no longer serves you. Acceptance is about embracing the full range of your emotions, knowing that they will pass, and trusting that through the process you will emerge stronger and more self-aware. By mastering emotional management, you reclaim control over your internal world. You become the author of your emotional narrative, rather than letting someone else's presence in your life dictate how you feel. This is the power of detachment, recognizing that while emotions are a part of you, they don't define you or your choices. Through this practice, you free yourself to move forward with clarity, purpose, and peace. Understanding that attachment is often rooted in fear is one of the most powerful insights when it comes to emotionally detaching from someone. At the core of many emotional attachments is a deep-seated fear that can be difficult to recognize because it operates beneath the surface. This fear might be of loneliness, rejection, or the unknown, but it ultimately drives you to hold on to someone even when the relationship is no longer healthy or fulfilling. Emotional attachment becomes a coping mechanism for dealing with these fears. When you're attached to someone, you may feel a sense of safety, even if the relationship is causing you more harm than good. The fear of losing that person or what they represent in your life can be overwhelming. It's not just about the person themselves, but also about what they symbolize. For many, the person they're attached to may represent stability, validation, or love. And the idea of detaching feels like losing those things, which is why it becomes so difficult to let go. Fear often disguises itself in various ways, making it hard to recognize. You might tell yourself that staying attached is a sign of love or loyalty, but in reality, it's the fear of what life looks like without that person that keeps you tied to them. You may fear that without them, you won't find someone else who understands you the same way or who provides the same emotional comfort. But it's important to realize that attachment based on fear is not the same as love. True love is grounded in freedom and mutual respect, whereas attachment keeps you bound by anxiety and insecurity. The fear of being alone is one of the most common reasons people remain emotionally attached to others. Loneliness can be an intimidating prospect, especially if you've built your sense of security around the presence of someone else. But what you must understand is that loneliness, while uncomfortable, is temporary. The fear of loneliness is often exaggerated in your mind, making you believe that being alone is worse than staying in an unhealthy attachment. But in truth, being alone provides a space for healing, self-reflection, and growth. When you face the fear of loneliness head-on, you begin to realize that your worth and your happiness are not dependent on the presence of another person. Fear of rejection is another powerful force that keeps you emotionally attached. Rejection can feel like a personal attack on your value, leading you to question your worth. The thought of someone leaving you or not wanting to be with you can stir up deep feelings of inadequacy, which is why many people cling to relationships even when they know it's time to let go. The fear of rejection tricks you into believing that being rejected by someone means that you're not good enough. But rejection doesn't define your worth. It simply means that the relationship was not meant to continue. It's also important to recognize that fear of the unknown plays a major role in emotional attachment. When you've been with someone for a long time, even if the relationship has become toxic or unfulfilling, the familiarity of that person provides a sense of comfort. The thought of moving forward without them can feel like stepping into uncharted territory, which naturally brings up fear. You may wonder what life will look like without them, how you'll cope, or whether you'll find happiness again. But the unknown doesn't have to be something to fear. In fact, the unknown is full of possibilities. When you release yourself from attachment, you open the door to new opportunities, new relationships, and new experiences that may be far more enriching than what you're holding on to out of fear. One of the ways to begin detaching from this fear-based attachment is by confronting your fears directly. This requires deep introspection. Ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? Why do I feel the need to stay attached to this person often? Just acknowledging the fear takes away some of its power. Once you've identified the root of your fear, you can start to work on overcoming it. This may involve challenging the beliefs that keep you trapped. For instance, if your fear is of loneliness, you might remind yourself that you are fully capable of creating a fulfilling life on your own. If your fear is of rejection, you can practice affirming your own worth, independent of anyone else's opinions or actions. Another important step in overcoming fear-based attachment is learning to trust in yourself and in the process of life. Fear often arises when you feel like you lack control, but part of detachment is recognizing that you don't need to control every outcome. You can let go and trust that whatever happens, you will be okay. This shift in mindset is incredibly liberating because it allows you to release the grip of fear and move forward with confidence, knowing that you are enough as you are and that the future holds endless possibilities. It's also crucial to understand that fear, while uncomfortable, is a natural part of the human experience. Everyone feels fear at some point, especially when it comes to relationships and emotional bonds. But fear doesn't have to dictate your actions. When you learn to recognize fear for what it is, a temporary emotional response, you can begin to detach from it. You no longer allow fear to hold you hostage, and instead you take control of your emotional well-being. Recognizing that attachment is rooted in fear gives you the clarity to start letting go. It allows you to separate the emotion of fear from the reality of the situation. You realize that staying attached out of fear is not serving you, and in fact, it's keeping you from experiencing the fullness of life. When you understand this, detachment becomes not only possible, but necessary for your emotional growth and freedom. You begin to see that on the other side of fear is peace, self-discovery, and a deeper sense of fulfillment. Detaching from someone emotionally is not simply about cutting ties or walking away. It's about reclaiming your identity and rediscovering who you are outside of that relationship. Over time, emotional attachments can lead us to blur the lines between ourselves and the person to whom we are attached. We may start to derive our sense of self from the connection we share with them. Their thoughts, their needs, their desires can begin to overshadow our own. This is especially true in relationships where the attachment has been intense or long-lasting. In such cases, it's easy to lose sight of who you are independently of the relationship. This loss of identity is subtle but profound. When you're deeply attached to someone, your sense of self can become intertwined with theirs. Your emotions, your decisions, and even your daily routines may start to revolve around that person. You might begin to prioritize their needs over your own or compromise on things that are important to you in order to maintain the relationship. While this is often done out of love or care, it can slowly erode your individuality. You may find yourself asking, who am I without this person, or what do I even want for myself? This is where the process of emotional detachment becomes transformative. It is an opportunity for you to reconnect with yourself, to rediscover who you are without the influence of the relationship. To begin reclaiming your identity, you must first acknowledge the ways in which you may have lost sight of yourself. This requires deep introspection and honesty. Think about the ways in which your attachment has shaped your actions, your choices, and your self-perception. Have you been making decisions based on what you think the other person wants? Have you been neglecting your own desires in order to keep the peace? Recognizing these patterns is the first step in reclaiming your individuality. Once you've identified where you've compromised yourself, it's time to start exploring who you are outside of the attachment. This may feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable at first, especially if the relationship has been central to your life for a long time. But this is a necessary step in the process of detachment. Start by asking yourself, what are my passions? What are my goals? What makes me happy? These questions may seem simple, but they are crucial in rediscovering your identity. By focusing on what truly brings you joy and fulfillment, you begin to reconnect with your authentic self. Another key aspect of reclaiming your identity is reestablishing boundaries. When we're emotionally attached to someone, those boundaries can become blurred or non-existent. We may give more of ourselves than we should, or we may allow the other person to take up too much space in our lives. Reestablishing boundaries is about defining where you end and the other person begins. It's about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your emotional space. This doesn't mean shutting the other person out completely unless that's what's needed, but it does mean making a conscious decision to prioritize your own needs and well-being. As you begin to set these boundaries, it's important to honor them. This may mean saying no to things that don't align with your values or distancing yourself from situations that drain your energy. It might mean spending more time alone to focus on your personal growth or engaging in activities that help you reconnect with yourself. This process of boundary setting is not selfish, it's an act of self-love and self-respect. It's about recognizing that you deserve to be treated with the same care and consideration that you give to others. In addition to setting boundaries, it's important to cultivate a sense of self-worth that is independent of the relationship. Emotional attachment often leads us to seek validation from the other person. We may start to believe that our worth is tied to their approval or their presence in our lives, but true self-worth comes from within. It's about knowing that you are valuable regardless of what anyone else thinks or feels. Reclaiming your identity means affirming your worth, not because of who you're attached to, but because of who you are. One powerful way to rebuild your sense of self-worth is through self-care. This goes beyond just physical care. It's about nurturing your emotional and mental well-being as well. Engage in activities that make you feel good about yourself, whether that's exercising, practicing mindfulness, or pursuing creative endeavors. Surround yourself with people who uplift and support you, and distance yourself from those who drain your energy. Self-care is about making yourself a priority, and in doing so, you reinforce the message that you are worthy of love, care, and respect, starting with your own. As you continue the process of detachment, you may also find it helpful to reflect on the lessons you've learned from the relationship. Every attachment, whether healthy or not, teaches us something about ourselves. What have you learned about your needs, your boundaries, or your emotional triggers? What patterns have emerged that you want to change in future relationships? By reflecting on these lessons, you gain a deeper understanding of yourself and your emotional landscape. This self-awareness is key to preventing future attachments from overshadowing your identity. Reclaiming your identity is about embracing the freedom that comes with detachment. Emotional attachment can feel like a burden, a weight that keeps you tied to someone else's expectations or desires. But as you detach, you free yourself from that weight. You create space in your life to explore new possibilities, new relationships, and new experiences. This freedom allows you to grow into the person you were always meant to be, someone who is whole and complete on their own. In this process of rediscovery, you may find that you are stronger and more resilient than you realized. Detachment doesn't mean that you no longer care about the person or the relationship. It means that you are no longer defined by it. You have reclaimed your identity, and in doing so, you have reclaimed your power, You are no longer bound by fear, dependence, or external validation. You are free to be yourself fully, authentically, and unapologetically. And that is the true essence of emotional detachment. Emotionally detaching from someone is not about severing all ties or suppressing your feelings. It's about reclaiming your power, rediscovering your identity, and fostering a healthier relationship with yourself. It requires acknowledging and confronting the fears that have kept you bound to the attachment, such as the fear of loneliness, rejection, or the unknown. By understanding that emotional attachment often masks these underlying insecurities, you can begin the transformative process of letting go. This journey involves re-establishing boundaries, nurturing self-worth, and embracing the freedom that comes with detachment. As you reconnect with your true self, you'll realize that you don't need to be defined by any relationship. Your sense of value, happiness, and fulfillment come from within. Emotional detachment ultimately leads to greater peace, resilience, and personal growth, allowing you to move forward with clarity and strength.